Live. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to have a veteran Jordanian Palestinian American journalist Rami Khouri join us today. Where are you now? Are you in Beirut, Rami?
No, I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but going to Amman in 2 days.
Ah, okay. All right. Good to see you
Get
here.
ready for coffee and
Yeah.
Yeah,
nap it.
uh, and Dawood, where are you now?
I'm back home. I'm in Amman. Next week I'll be going to Jerusalem, so I might
Ah,
file
okay.
in from
Okay.
there as well.
So
And
both of
how's
us are.
Washington? Do you have rain? Did it rain yesterday with the
It did.
uh,
Yeah. With
president's
the.
birthday?
I know it did actually rain.
Really good to get
But
your.
hello, yeah, all right, yeah, it did, and there's a lot of excitement in DC. But first, I'd like to, I think, hear from Dawood and Rami about the latest update on the Iran war. Is it really over this time? After the announcement, how many times did we hear that announcement? So I'm just curious, is it really over? So I'd love to hear from
Yeah,
both
I
of
wrote
you.
like 3 weeks ago. I wrote the winners and losers, and then I kept on waiting to publish it. So yesterday I said I'm going to publish it whether it works or not. But I took the winners and losers from a different perspective than most people. Most people are saying, America lost, Iran won, whatever. But I decided to take it from the perspective of policy issues. What succeeded and what failed? And I start with the fact that Iran, uh, strategic planning or strategic disposition was a big winner. So what we saw was, really smart Iranian diplomats working with the military and so on. They really did a good job in getting as much as they can out of the Trump administration. So I think it was a big success for strategic disposition. Somebody said, the Iranians had all these PhD guys, and the Americans had lawyers who deal with the real estate. So, so it was clearly a win for the diplomatic usage, and we all know how much Persian civilization. Maybe Rami can talk a lot more about that because their expertise in how they dealt with this war and this America. I mean, for example, they didn't buy all the threats that Trump sent to them. I mean, Trump,
Yeah.
Rami, what do you think of all these? Kept on threatening them, and they didn't care. They knew what they wanted. They knew what the assets they had, and they used them. So I thought strategically, Iranian negotiators were big winners. Whether Iran as a country or as a regime succeeded, I leave that to others. But I think what was successful is how you deal with diplomacy and in times of war.
Interesting. I also saw in your column, Dawood, that you mentioned their drone, the Shahid drone, and how you
Yeah, I
considered it
think
you considered it one of the winners as well. So
equipment, military equipment, showed that you can have the biggest planes and the F-15s and F-35s and all these things, and yet the $20,000 drone did amazing jobs, and especially now in Lebanon, we're seeing that the Israelis are not able to stop these drones, who are really very inexpensive, so they can have as many as they want sent out. And the Israelis, and Americans and others would use, $2 million Patriots to bring down the little $20,000 drone. So I think the usage of electronics, and I think what we've seen, and I've written before that on this buffer zone idea of Lebanon. You don't need buffer zones anymore when you have missiles and drones. So it's totally old military strategy. So I don't know, Rami, what do you think?
Well, there's so many dimensions to what's going on that it really is difficult to know where to start and what to look at. I share your views, though, that trying to predict winners and losers and whatever is fascinating and entertaining. The important thing is to identify, in my view, what happened, what is actually new And when we talk about new stuff in the Middle East, we're not just talking about the last 4 years or the last 100 years. We're talking about the last 4,000 years in terms of Western imperial manipulations and invasions and threats and indigenous resistance and responses. And several really important things have happened in the last 3, 4 months, which the most significant one is that the combination of Iran, Hezbollah, and a few of their other non state allies effectively checked the power of the two biggest nuclear powers in the Middle East, which is the US and Israel. It's unbelievable that they forced them twice into ceasefires. And then, even though the Israeli American tradition of duplicity and dishonesty and chicanery kicked in, and they attacked the Iranians when they were negotiating, like they attacked Hamas when they were negotiating. This kind of duplicitous Western Zionist behavior kicked in again. But despite all that, the Israelis and Americans were forced into first a ceasefire and now into this memorandum of understanding. I mean, that is historically significant. What does it imply for the future? We don't know. And this is where I don't know about you, Dawood, but about 25 years ago, in my now 60, this is the 60th year of my career. I started in 1966 in college writing about the Middle East. In 60 years, so about 25 years ago, I stopped predicting the future. You know, when you're young, you predict, well, this is going to happen. And this is what entertainment television does, and social media and the theatrics of the most of the Western media, not all of it, but most of it. They say, "Oh, this is going to happen. Watch for this." But
Yeah.
I think the only thing we can do is identify what did happen, what's new, and what's significant. And this ability of Iran and Hezbollah and their non-state allies, and the fact that they're non-state allies is critical. You know, has Ansarullah and the popular mobilization units and Hamas and others, they were no match to Israel and the US in terms of sheer military power, ability to destroy entire societies as they tried to do in Gaza. But they were able to force them into a ceasefire. And now the Americans are making concessions, uh, which, which affirm, without formally signing on the bottom line, which affirm that the US has not achieved, neither has Israel, any of its main strategic objectives. They've killed a lot of people, they've created tens of thousands of disabled young kids, and they've destroyed schools, they've done every bad thing you can think of, but they haven't achieved their strategic objectives. And now, in fact, the resistance front, or they call it now the resistance. There's a new word that the
Axis.
Iranians used, the ARC or something like that. There's a resistance group of around the region, and more people are going to support this politically and otherwise. So that's really new. How this translates into longer term strategic realignments in the region, it's hard to tell right now,
Mm.
because the Americans and the Israelis are not easily going to surrender. They're still
Mm.
very strong, and they can still create massive damage. But they have to adjust to the new reality. And how do the Arab states adjust to this new realities? The Arab states were basically on leave during the Iran war and the Gaza war, the genocide. And the Arab governments have to really think hard about what is their policy. Will their policies align more with their people's sentiments, which are clearly critical of the US and Israel? We know from polling and other things. So there's all kinds of critical central issues that are all up in the air now. This is an unbelievable moment for journalism to cover this. And so those are my quick initial comments.
Yeah. One of the things I wrote as winners are the opponents of what I call the dumb war. You know,
Mm. I saw that.
Clinton, and not Clinton, Obama said, "I'm for wars, but not for a dumb war." And this was a dumbest of any war in the last, I don't know how many decades. So we have a situation where NATO was out, Europe and all of the
Mm.
Western countries were opposed to this war. Inside America, it was the least popular war in decades. And even within the White House, you had Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance in and out. They're against, but they're afraid to say so because they're afraid of Trump. So we had a situation where there's really been opposition to a war, absence of any planning, of course. And also there was no, so, I mean, people usually wrap themselves with the flag in wars. This is the one war that there was no, it was so unpopular. And I don't know, I think the results will be seen in the future of these people who oppose the war. And I think the NATO America split is going to be the biggest issue that we have to look for in the future.
What about Lebanon, Rami? And where does Lebanon stand now in the midst of what's happening, especially now after the ceasefire? And remember, the Iranians insisted on stopping the attack on Lebanon if they want to sign the deal. So, if you can just give us the view of Lebanon and where do you think we're headed now, especially after the ceasefire?
Okay, the first thing I would say is that we should not play the game of the Western Zionist imperial powers and talk about Lebanon only or Palestine only or Iran or the media or this. What we're seeing here is the failure of the entire infrastructure and superstructure of Zionist plus Western imperial alliances. It started with the British and the French helped 100 years ago, and now the Americans. That whole structure is failing. It hasn't collapsed, but it's failing. It can't achieve its objectives. And if you study the last 100 years, even a little bit more going back to the late 19th century, you find that the three places in the Western Asia region that were most uh, bothered by, attacked, subjugated to hegemonic controls, degraded, dehumanized, humiliated, whatever, by the Zionist Western uh, uh, and then the Israeli Western combine. The three places that suffered the most were Iran, Palestine, and Lebanon. And it's no surprise that Iran, Palestine, and Lebanon now, after a century of being subjugated to this, have emerged as focal points of the resistance. The word I was looking for before was belt. The Iranians talk now of a resistance belt rather than an arc or a circle or whatever. But it's no accident that Lebanon, Iran, and Palestine have emerged as focal points of this resistance process. Where it goes, we don't know, but we've seen already some historic, unprecedented achievements of forcing Israel and the US to do these ceasefires. Lebanon is now, literally this week, the critical litmus test, let's call it. All the others are still important, but Lebanon is, because the Israelis are going to use Lebanon, they're doing it already as a means to continue what they've done for the last 100 years, the Zionist movement in the state of Israel, which is to deny and ignore and degrade international law and global norms of human decency and protection of civilians and the rights of states. They're going to use Lebanon to say, we don't care what anybody does, we don't care about the law, we're going to keep bombing, we're going to keep killing people, we're going to keep destroying schools and water systems or whatever. So Lebanon is the hinge that Israel will try to use and is already doing to break up this accord. They're thinking that if they can, because the Iranians insisted that Lebanon is part of the ceasefire, and the Americans first tried to deny it, and then they accepted it. So that's what I would look for in Lebanon. And the second, and I don't think the Israelis are going to succeed because people understand what they're trying to do. So the critical point about Lebanon is how can the Lebanese rally to defend their country in a legitimate way against Israeli incursions, which are fully supported, armed, funded, and protected diplomatically by the United States. This is going to be a key battleground, but it's only in the short term. In the longer term, we're going to see continued other dynamics in the region that test this. And I think Lebanon has suffered so much for Palestine, for Arab national values, for the rule of law, for anything you want to use to measure, that they don't deserve to keep suffering like this. But the Israelis couldn't achieve their goals after the Gaza genocide, couldn't achieve their goals in Iran, and now they're trying to achieve their goals in Lebanon. And I'm 100% convinced that the Lebanese people will not allow this to happen and will search frantically for a diplomatic resolution. But they've got to get the split internally between their government leadership and the majority of their people. They've got to really overcome that and have a unified position, which takes some work.
You know, Rami, Lebanon is one of the founders of the United Nations. I mean, they're one of the, and they're a key. They are, unlike Gaza, which Israel says it's disputed territory. Lebanon is not disputed territories. It's territories owned, governed, sovereign by a founding member of the UN. And I think what is happening is that the Lebanon issue has become so into the Israeli election campaign. The last attack on Beirut was clearly an election act because Trump told him not to attack. Everybody told him. And so his own opponents, which many people think are modest and so on, were pushing hard that he should attack because we should not, let the Hezbollah get away with it. And the Iranians were very clever. They could have, responded, but they said no. Let's make them pay. And so they got few concessions out of the Americans for not responding to the attack on Beirut. So I thought it was very clever of the Iranians, and I think it exposed that the election issue in Israel was much more important than the interest, if you will, the strategic national interest of the state of Israel. So they gave up their own interest for one or two seats in the next elections.
But for me, also the idea of like killing the bad guys that the US and Israel has been promoting for years, I think it's now like antiquated and it doesn't work anymore. Like we're there to kill the bad guys. Like how many quote unquote bad guys killed, and they were hoping for success, and that like never even worked. So I think in terms of like the US's campaign is strategically this does not work anymore. Nobody buys it, and it's just it's a failed strategy. I'm just curious to see what do you think about let's go kill the bad guys that they've been promoting for, I don't know, since Bin Laden or even maybe before.
What do you think,
Well,
Natasha? Sorry, Rami,
go ahead.
about
Go ahead.
America? How will the Lebanon-Iran war affect American elections in midterm?
Yeah.
Sorry, Rami.
Well, one of the sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. We discussed this with Dawood about how, I think it's one of Trump's main blunders. I mean, he had many blunders, but the Iran war was a huge one. And we've actually seeing it in the local elections. We have local elections here in my town tomorrow, but many candidates are saying, "Oh, we're not APAC funded." Like that's a point of reference that we are against what's happening. So I mean, everyone around me here in the US opposes the war. I don't know anyone who actually is with it. So I think it's going to be a huge loss for Republicans. And as you said, we don't have a crystal ball, but I think that's my gut feeling.
Yeah, if you go back to just before the Gaza situation, the recent genocide, and just maybe 5 years before that, in the last 8 years or so, we've seen, and I've watched it in the Middle East, and I've been here now for 4 years living in the US, but going back and forth all the time. But I've seen really a historic development, which is the entry of the Palestine issue, and it's the Palestine issue. It's not Arab national rights. It's not sovereign rights for people in the Middle East. It's the rights of the Palestinians. That issue has now entered into the American political system, and it has done so primarily by the activism of young Arab Americans, young meaning people in their
Gen Z.
30s,
Gen Z.
30s,
Yeah.
40s,
And Gaza
uh, at,
bloggers,
at the
as well
local
as
level.
Gaza bloggers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, at the state level, the municipal council level, county election levels, it's one of the most phenomenal political developments, I think, in modern American history. It's similar to what Jesse Jackson did in 1968 when he launched the big campaign to register black voters to vote, which had some impact. But then, of course, people like Trump and the Republicans gerrymandered the district. So, but this is an ongoing battle. The American Civil War is ongoing, but the Palestinians learned from the experiences of the first generation of immigrants that you can't just lie low and run your grocery store and send your kids to school. You've got to get into the fray of American life, and that means local politics. And we've
Yeah.
got now hundreds of Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, Asian Americans, all kinds of nationalities who are entering and doing very well. And Mamdani is the most dramatic one, but there's many others. So this is an extraordinary phenomenon. It includes the exposure, exposing APAC for what it is, as interfering, foreign interference in American politics. I expect that to be challenged in the law and the courts soon here in the United States. And this is one of the reasons that we're seeing now some of these changes and the rise of the progressive left and the socialist, democratic socialists and the Americans. And when you get the traditional left, the so-called left, like people like Biden and Kamala Harris, both of whom have vacuums where their moral core should be, there's nothing in there. And it showed up in Gaza. It showed
Yeah.
up very clearly. And that's one of the reasons that Democrats are doing poorly, among other things. So I think this is a long answer to your question, but the impact of Palestine and now Iran uh, is clear inside the United States, and it's exposing the fundamental nature of the Zionist movement and the policies of the State of Israel and their
Yeah.
linkages with mainstream politicians in the U.S. That's a whole new phenomenon, and it's
Mm.
growing, and it's already having impact in the primaries we're seeing for the November elections. A lot of people in the primaries are winning where they explicitly come out and say, I'm against the genocide in Gaza, I'm against sending Israel more arms. So Iran added new dimensions to that. Lebanon is going to now add new dimensions. And this is partly because many people around the world, including yourselves and others, have started to expose in the media, in the alternative media and social media, and even mainstream media, have started to show the realities of what Israel is doing, what Palestinians are suffering, and what the United States is supporting. And this is too much for young Americans to accept, that this is something that they don't want to be part of. And they have a way to express that through their local elections and national elections. And this is an extraordinary phenomenon, which whose impact is too early to tell. But when the Arab American and Muslim American and Asian American, Hispanic American, Black American, all these movements start cooperating and coordinating more, the impact on national politics is going to be huge.
I
And that's
interviewed the Chris Rapp, he's the Democratic primary winner in Philadelphia's the third district. And he said he was for genocide. I mean, he said genocide. He refused to take APAC money. And he went against the black Muslim nominee of the Democratic Party. And he beat him by 15 points. And he said, I stand for justice. I stand for, this is what we stood for in the Black African American movement. And we stand with Palestine. So he won on the Palestine ticket without taking a single penny from APAC and going against his own Democratic Party. He's not Arab American. He's not Muslim. I mean, he is just an elected state representative who went against his own party and won big. And I just wrote a piece about it in Arab News because I think that's what we have great people who are Arab Americans, but also once you get mainstream Americans also saying genocide, then that's when you're winning.
For me, it's like I don't think APAC saw that coming. I don't think APAC saw the young Arab American kids, let's say, doing that, changing American politics using social media, that it caused many of them to panic to the degree that they wanted to buy part of TikTok just to control the narrative. And I think it just took everyone by surprise, including APAC and, all their Haspera and all of that, that sort of no one actually saw this plot, including me. Like, I've been living in the US for 22 years and I've never seen so much pro-Palestinian discourse happening, even around me in here, the quiet suburbs. And I think, honestly, it took everyone by surprise, including APAC and their supporters.
So what happened last night at the White House?
Uh,
Did
the
the storm
US
come?
this like, I did not want to watch because I was like really not interested. But for me, but I just read about it, the booing, the his birthday celebration, and I've been listening to the radio today about people saying about what happened and all of that. But majority of the people that I surround myself with, they think it's ridiculous, just another show of power. But actually, this takes me to another development that happened in DC last week, which is a bit positive in terms of the courts and in the US still work, that they removed Trump's name from the Kennedy Center. I was talking with Dawood about it while prepping the show, and I was like, Dawood, how this is relevant to the Middle East, and shall we mention it on the show? And I think it's actually extremely relevant because we had someone who's like a dictator, like president, who wanted to put his name, his statues everywhere, but the court stopped him and they removed it. And the Washington Post showed a live streaming of removing the name of the Kennedy Center. I'm actually going to the Kennedy Center on Thursday for a concert, so I'm excited to see what's happening there. But it might be small, but it's very symbolic that, okay, there's lots of crazy things that are happening in the US, but you know what, the court and the laws are they still work to this still degree. They told the president, no, you can't do this, and he cannot. They stopped him. He's still not a dictator yet where he can actually enforce his name on the building, which is, I think, that's good development, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, I think it is significant. It's symbolic, but it is really part of this big battle that's now being waged within the United States, which has been. It really started in the when I was in college in the late '60s in New York State. The civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, the environmental movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement. These four things happened together and mobilized all kinds of people and had a little bit of impact, but not much, because the oligarchic elite, the power elite in the U.S., which is deeply, deeply linked with pro-Zionist and pro-Israeli forces and pro free capitalist unleashed capitalism forces, they all kicked in. So for the last 40, 50 years, we've been witnessing this battle. It's a kind of an eternal American cultural civil war between the far right and the moderate center and the far left, and this is part of it. Now, Trump took this to a new level because he injected into it a combination of cartoon characters like him and Hegseth and others who literally it's like watching Roadrunner to watch these guys what they do. It's incoherent, it's inconsistent, it's inconclusive, it's mostly unstudied, and in large cases it's ineffective. But in some cases it is effective because they do have about a third of the population that supports their cultural position. But what happened when Trump became president, it wasn't just a cultural force. I mean, you had people like George Wallace back in the 70s who presented, or Buchanan or others who presented this conservative right wing view, and they got 30% of the population. But Trump went beyond that and tapped into anti-immigrant sentiment, anti-Islamic sentiment, and others, and racist sentiments, and got elected twice, which was quite amazing. So that's a reflection of the of the fragile, harried condition of the American political psyche. That's a different issue. But he tapped into it. But when he's translated his cultural, translated that position into political action, he started messing up, and that's why he's losing gradually a lot of his support. But there is still a live big battle going on. So the Kennedy Center issue is one where he got his name there. That was taken off. There's things that he has support in the Supreme Court. So it's not over, but we're really at getting to the high watermarks of this cultural political battle inside the United States. What's important is that the Palestine issue became part of this battle without the American army being fighting in Palestine like it was in Afghanistan or Vietnam. So this is extremely significant. And I think scholars need to understand this better to help us understand, well, why did young Americans suddenly, not suddenly, but gradually take this position? There's something that they found morally abhorrent to them to support the genocide in Gaza. They saw people like Kamala Harris as people who had a vacuum in the place where their moral center of gravity should be. It wasn't there. They acted like machines, not like human beings. And the more this goes on, the more it will impact politics. But the critical fact that Palestine has become part of this, and at graduations, at football matches, at basketball games, at almost any event, you'll see keffiyehs and whatever. So this is a phenomenon that we have to understand. But there's two separate things. There's the internal American cultural war, and you have the external issue of the abhorrence of a majority of Americans now, the abhorrence of American policies supporting what the Israeli state is doing in its genocidal and ethnic cleansing policies. That's a point of convergence now, and we need to keep our eye on that.
Like I keep thinking about the kufi. Remember the beginning of the Gaza war, those 3 Palestinians in the US were shot because they were wearing the kufi.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think anyone, like, the fear of wearing the kufi, I think is way less. I see people wearing the kufi everywhere. I was at a concert yesterday in Baltimore by a German British composer. It has nothing to do with Arabs or anything. It's like classical music, and there was a black woman wearing the kufi. And it's, I go to Barnes and Noble to like work from there. I see like a white woman comes wearing the kufi. Like kufi now is everywhere. And I think there's like, if you see the shift 3 years ago when those 3 kids were shot for wearing the kufi, and now where the kufi is like becoming somehow mainstream, that even the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup, the Chilean Palestinian singer actually wore the kufi. So it's interesting how the kufi now is just the image, how it changed completely.
Thank you so much, Rami. Thank you so much for the people following us. Carol, Sharifa, Arwa Dawa, Damon, Marianne, Mary, Margie, Terry Erickson, Mendigas, Charles Bill. Thank you so much for following us. Please stay tuned every Monday. 2 Arab journalists, 1 Levant.
Thank you, Rami, so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. See you. Bye-bye. Bye.